Welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today is a really special episode. I actually have two guests. I have Chief Gary Landers and I have Assistant Chief Alvarado from Euless PD in Texas. Chief Landers has 35 years experience in law enforcement, and at the time of this recording, tomorrow is Assistant Chief Alvarado's 26th year anniversary in law enforcement. When I first connected with these two, it was so apparent how passionate they are about wellness. And so I've been really looking forward to this conversation. So, welcome to the show, Chief Landers and Assistant Chief Alvarado. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. I want to spend a lot of time on today's episode talking about wellness because I know that this is something that you two are really passionate about. But I was hoping that we could maybe just start with very brief intros from both of you. I know I gave an intro of how long you've been in this career, but maybe we can start with Chief Landers and you can give us a short little synopsis or little one-liner of what the last 35 years have looked like for you.
Long. No,
Well,
it has been it's a rewarding career. My family has been in Euless since the 50s, and my grandparents settled here, and I raised my family here. And the city of Euless Police Department has become just a way of life. And so this is my passion. My passion is this community and the people that work in this community and the people that live here.
thank you. I love it. Assistant Chief?
So, grew up in a law enforcement household. My dad was a police officer for 40 years and retired in a nearby city. And then I'm married to another first responder. We like to tease that they're second responders, but he is a firefighter in Euless also. So we both serve this community, and we have a son that's growing up and looking at what that looks like for him too. So he says he's going to go to the fire side, but we'll see what happens.
Are you trying to convert him?
Daughter that was just
We
married.
do have a daughter that was just married. She's grown. She's a teacher, and so she's pretty special. But yeah.
I love it. Thank you. One of the things that I noticed from both of you is you shared about your life, about like who you are and your passion and your family. And I really respect that. I think so often I'm super guilty of this too, where when people ask me about me, I immediately just start talking fully about what I do. So I really appreciate that you guys introduced a little bit about your family and, your background outside of the career, because I think we forget that there's a human side and that we do have a whole other side of the coin to ourselves. It's not just what we do, it's our life and who we are and things that we have outside of our career. So I appreciate you sharing that. You two are colleagues, but you're also best friends. And
Yes.
you've talked about this a few times. Tell us a little bit about that. How did you guys start working together? What does your friendship look like? And how has that helped you with your personal wellness, but also, being able to navigate the stressors and requirements of your career?
Yeah.
I'll take it first. I would tell you that we are best friends. It's not just a phrase. It's not just something that I'm saying because we're on this podcast. And I will tell anyone in this police department, in this community, that we're best friends. Said it many a times. Um, I think, when you have a family, when you grow up in law enforcement, which I grew up here, I've worked here since I was 18. So I've literally formed my entire adulthood around what I do for a living um, in this community. But a lot of times your family does not understand, unless you're in this business, they do not understand the things that you go through emotionally, the things that you go through physically, day in and day out, and you carry those things with you. And you can go home and you can talk about it, but they just really do not understand it. That doesn't mean you don't go home and talk to them about it. But they don't understand. And when you have someone that you can share with that understands how much that we actually deal with on a daily basis and how much our officers deal with on a daily basis, it just makes it very easy. And when you can almost finish each other's sentences because we've worked together so long that it just makes it it makes my job easier to have somebody uh, that's my best friend, but also the assistant police chief for the community. I don't have to worry about what she says. She doesn't have to worry about what I say. We can pretty much finish each other's sentences on a regular basis, and it's our thoughts are in line. She has a different perspective being female. I have a different perspective being male, and sometimes those clash, but we work through it. Just like anything else. And so it's better for me to be able to understand the female side of law enforcement and she understand the male side. And a female in law enforcement is there's a whole different thing that she has to deal with that me as a male officer never ever have to deal with. And so for her to rise through the ranks and get to where she's at is definitely a testament to who she is inside here and who she is as a friend and a colleague. And so it's just I couldn't ask for a better person to share this experience of being the chief of police for the city of Euless with.
Thank you.
You're like,
Yeah,
oh.
it makes me feel good to hear him say that because, we didn't start off friends. I mean, we worked together for many years before that friendship really developed. And sometimes, being a woman in law enforcement, it's difficult to make those friendships because you do work with a lot of men. And, I'm married, he's married. And so people question, when you have a friendship between a man and a woman or try to make it something that it is not, which is very unfortunate. But we both serve this community, and so we have similar experiences and shared, commitments, family commitments, things like that. And so we understand that in each other. We both served on honor guard, and that was really where our friendship kind of developed. And I think once we kind of went through some things together and kind of saw each other's capabilities and just kind of like-minded feeling about this profession, about the people that we work with, and so it really helped cement that friendship. And so over the years, it's kind of funny now for me to hear him say that. It brings me a lot of pride that he's willing to publicly say, "Hey, this is my best friend. This is the person." And of course, our spouses are our true, partners. But it's cool to have that relationship with someone because this isn't an easy profession to go through. And when you have somebody that you can bounce things off of and that you can really trust, it just makes a world of difference.
Yeah. And something that I was hearing and when you were both speaking is this level of vulnerability that you're able to have talking about the things that you're going through individually, whether that's as a woman in law enforcement or as a male in law enforcement, chief of police, assistant chief, having these different shared experiences and being able to be vulnerable and talk about it, but then also being willing to listen to the other person's perspective because you have to have both, right? When it comes to communication, you have to be able to talk about it, but you also have to be able to listen. Do you think that that was something that came naturally to you in leadership to have that level of authenticity and vulnerability? Or do you think that's something that is a learned skill that you've learned over time? Because I don't see a lot of leaders who have that quality. I think that vulnerability is really scary, especially as rise through the ranks and become, a member of the command staff. It's almost like you feel like you have to operate in a certain way. And so to hear that you guys are really comfortable with vulnerability is something that's refreshing. So do you think that's something you learned, or was that something that came natural?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Naturally, I am a vulnerable person and I'm okay with sharing my feelings. I would tell you that in this business, having been in it for 35 years, there was a time in my life, the bulk of the time that I served here at the police department, where being vulnerable was not accepted.
Yeah.
And so you had to basically stuff those feelings aside and you had to hold on to them, compartmentalize them over here and not show that vulnerability. And then it comes out in sometimes it comes out in frustration, it comes out in exhaustion, it comes out in not wanting to continue the business. Vulnerability, I think, is something that is learned from a very young age, right? What your parents teach you and what you're okay with sharing, expressing to one another.
Mhm.
When you in this business, I think you're exactly right. Whenever you talk about you get to a certain level, and sometimes they have to take on this false persona of, look, I'm the head of this organization. I cannot have a bad day. I cannot have a feeling. I cannot shed a tear because I don't want to seem weak. I think that that is just, you turn that on its head because that is not a sign of weakness. That is a sign of strength. And it is a sign of strength because you're willing to show that to other people. And if you're not, then you still have those feelings inside, but you're holding on to them.
Right.
And it's going to come out somewhere else. It's going to show itself somewhere else. And so I would tell you that it's both sides. It's both. It's either learned and it's just a natural thing. I think if you have it naturally, then it can make you such a better person and such a better leader if you allow people to see that side of you. If you try to stuff it, you're going to have faults in your leadership because you're not necessarily believing everything that comes out of your mouth.
Yeah. I completely agree that it's strength and not a weakness. I do think that it's challenging and I've struggled with this. Like I throughout my life learned how to shove things down at a really early age and posture up and have this hardened exterior and I thought that that made me strong. And I realized over time that by avoiding it, that was the weakness. So anytime I'm trying to avoid or escape or numb or hide those things, that was when I was actually displaying weakness, right? Because for me,
Right.
and this is my perspective, and you guys can share, if you have a different perspective. But for me, the strength really came from being able to move forward from these things. So instead of like shoving them down, hiding them, being able to overcome them. And sometimes that means you have to cry. Sometimes that means you have to show emotion to get through it and to move forward stronger because of it or in spite of it. And so I think that somewhere along the line, we were all convinced that if you just didn't do that, that that was the strength. But I think by having these conversations, we can start to recognize that there's so much more strength in moving through the storm than avoiding the storm.
Correct. Absolutely correct. You want to add anything to that?
Oh no, I'm probably a little bit more like you. He and I are opposites.
Okay.
I am a very guarded person, and so over the years, I found even, as I've promoted, I was very guarded, and I didn't talk a lot about my family and my personal life. And I'm not sure why, maybe just something about my upbringing. We didn't talk about a lot of personal things or even things work related. I was very closed off. Now, I love to hear what other people have to say and their perspective, but it was difficult for me to give feedback in a personal way. And so he's really helped me overcome that because he is the opposite of that. Like he'll tell me exactly what he's thinking and how it makes him feel. And then I'm like, oh, uh, it's helped me come out of my shell a little bit with regards to that, which has been really good for me. And I think it's been good for even the people that I work with to hear my perspective on things or what I've been through, because then they get to know me better and they understand me better and the whys and things like that. So, but definitely is a learned skill for me when it comes to that. Yeah.
Well, I think too, if we want to set examples for others, we want to convey the message that it's okay to have those human emotions. It's okay to, be sad. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be human. Then we also have to show that, and I think that that can be really hard sometimes because, and I also think that probably to a certain extent it is apart because you're female too, and I've also experienced things like that where you don't want to be too vulnerable or too nice because you don't want to give the wrong impression that maybe like you're flirting or you're this or or you are trying to prove yourself and so you don't want to feel like you're weak. You want to try to like be able to compete with the other people within the industry, and so there might be a little bit of that too. But I think if we want other people to take care of themselves, I think it's incredibly unrelatable for us to say that we're perfect, right? Because those other people are looking up to us and saying, well, you seem okay. You don't show emotion. You're not vulnerable. You don't do these things. And so if I do those things, I feel then even more broken or even more weak. And so I think that people who are in leadership or who are in the wellness space, it's almost an obligation to do that, even if it's uncomfortable, so that other people can look at you and know that it's okay for them to feel the same way. Um, I know that wellness is something that's important to you guys. Obviously, you're really prioritizing this within your organization, but you said that there was something that happened. There was maybe an incident or something that happened that really kind of put wellness at the forefront for you. I don't even know this story yet, so this is gonna be the first time hearing it, but can you share a little bit about what happened and why wellness is such a priority for you right now?
Yeah, so we had years ago, I was a sergeant on a shift, and I believe you were a captain at the time and happened to be the on-call person. And so we had a critical incident that occurred where somebody had committed suicide, and our officers responded to that. And he was like, hey, is everybody okay? You know, how's everybody doing? I was like, we're fine, we're fine. Well, then a little bit later, he calls again, like, everybody okay? You know, and I was like, we're good. Like, why do you keep bothering me? And so I happened to talk to one of the officers on my shift and I said, hey, we're good, like, right? That, and he goes, no, we're not fine. And I went, we're not. And then at the time, I really thought, you know, I was very close with my officers, had a good relationship and a good rapport. And so for him to be honest with me was absolutely great. And I thought, wait a minute, what does he mean we're not all fine? So I pulled them in one by one into my office and talked to them that night. And so I had my eyes opened and they had been shut. And I felt like the biggest jerk on the planet because, you know, I'd always wanted to be available to my officers and understand them. And that night I realized I really knew nothing. And so I spoke to the first person and they said, well, this incident really hurt me because my wife has gone through things like this. And all I can think about, all I could see in that incident was my wife. And then the next person that spoke said, spoke about his brother. And then the next person told me something different. And so each person I spoke to had a different thing that had happened in their life that made them feel differently about the situation than I felt about it. And it was a big light bulb moment for me. And I swore I would never be that jerk again. And so it just kind of changed my whole thought process and helped me recognize, you know, that everybody relates differently to an incident. So, and I needed to be aware of that and recognize that. And so he and I had some conversations. A lot of things kind of spiraled after that because I went to one of our officers after that and I said, hey, if you wanted counseling or if you needed our employee assistance program, how would you, do you know what that is? Or I said, do you know what that program is? I didn't name it. And he goes, well, I think it's like EAP or something. He goes, I don't really know how I would get it if I need it. And I said, well, just try. Like, pretend you're an officer in need, just try. It took him 40 minutes to get where he needed to be. And I thought, man, 40 minutes is way too long. Like, we got to do something different. And so that kind of transpired. You know, we had some conversations about that. He just happened to be the person that I trusted to go to and could make things happen. Said, hey, what do you think about this? How can we change this? And he'd had his own issues over the years with some different things. And so it just kind of melded together that we were able to create something kind of new out of that.
Right. No, and you know, what she's referring to is peer support. So what the city as a whole, let's talk administration from city hall all the way down. And I'm not bad mouthing anybody that has gone before us. It's just a knowledge piece. And everybody said the EAP was, we got this program for our employees and it's out there. What they don't understand is they didn't understand the first responder side of it. The employee assistance program does not meet the needs of the employee in the police or the fire department, the people that have responded to these incidents. They see things that normal people should not see. They see things that just live with them for the rest of their lives. And so these images are burned into their head. And so you want to go to somebody that understands that side of it. So she brought the peer support piece to the forefront and says, we need to get a peer support team.
Yeah.
And she said it just a minute ago okay, she goes to me, I've been dubbed the guy that gets things done because it doesn't matter to me what people think. If I think it's the right thing to do, I'm going to keep pushing forward and I'm going to do my research and we're going to get it done. So I don't let people stand in my way. So I help them. I'm not the peer support guy. I didn't write the policy. I didn't do any of that. They wrote the policy. She wrote it. She was the parent of that kind of deal to get it started. And we have lots of other people inside this organization that helped input to that. But she was the driving force to get it done because of this incident. And so we took baby steps and we continued to take baby steps along the way. And the other thing that you have to do is change the mindset of the people that are supervising across the spectrum, across the organization. You got to change City Hall. You got to change the mindset of the people that are day to day supervising. And then you got to change the mindset of the officers. And so that is not something that happens in a week or two.
Yeah.
That has been years, cultivating that years and years and years. And then you use things that happen along the way to say, this is why, this is why, this is why we need to do that, different incidents that happen. And then until you get to a point where I think we've gotten to a lot of times, we all get complacent at times, but I think we've gotten to a point where our officers and our supervisors really pay attention to the calls for service that people go on, and they really go, okay, how does this relate to them personally? And how is this going to affect them personally? And so that is at the forefront of their mind. Handle your business, do what needs to be done, but immediately follow up with, are you okay? How do we make sure you're okay? How do we get you to the people that you need to talk to? Do you need to talk to someone? And so that's kind of it's really heartwarming, I guess, to be able to say that we've come from nothing to this, and we will continue to build on it. I mean, nothing's perfect. Continue to build on that, and continue to seek new alternatives and new avenues to make sure that our people are okay. But I we also had an officer that was killed in 2016. And I think from the time that Brenda's talking about and up to 2016, we kind of muddled through the waters, and we kind of had ebbs and flows of, okay, this is a major incident. So we need to ask the question now. And instead of asking it about everything that they deal with, they would wait for a specific incident to happen. 2016, David Hoffer was killed in the line of duty. He was basically murdered in a park. He was murdered in a park by an individual that we had dealt with numerous amounts of times. Did the justice system fail? Who knows? I mean, it's just one of those things that happen. But he calculatedly set up and caused a incident that would have an officer respond so that he could kill that officer. That's exactly what he did. He sat in a creek and waited on that, and that's what happened. At that immediate point right there, we spring into action, right? How do we deal with this from a criminal justice perspective? How do we put the right people in jail, do the right things, do all this stuff, and make sure we honor David's legacy, right? But on the backside, we're also trying to make sure our officers are okay. Were we perfect at it? No, I would tell you we learned lots of things from David Hoffer's incident that we were deficient in. One of those is being the counseling perspective. How do we sent officers that were involved in that to a counseling thing that we said, oh yeah, we have counselors and we're going to send you to it. Well, they came back and said that didn't work at all. That was nothing. And then they went out and found someone on their own and kind of brought that to us, that there was a difference that we needed to get to. We knew it, we just didn't know exactly how big of a difference it needed to be. So that incident kind of opened our eyes to that. Our culture is great. Our culture has been great. Adding to our culture the peer side of it, and adding that in and making it front and center whenever we're hiring people and bringing people into this organization, and changing the thought processes of our supervisors, not just our patrol people. I will tell you, records, our jail people, our dispatchers, every single one of them in some form or fashion deal with this first responder stress and these things that they have to deal with and the things that they see and hear. So it's not just the officers on the street. or the fireman on the street. It's the entire organization. And the entire organization has to understand that it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. And so, and I took that from a book that it's The Journey to Midnight. Matt Griffin wrote a book. He was a police officer up in the Northeast and he was undercover. And The Journey to Midnight's the book. And then, was it last year?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, last year at our awards banquet, last year, sometimes when I met Matt and Brenda and I were just sitting here talking, what do we do at our awards banquet? And he had written this book. We got a copy of it. We both read it. Um, Once we read the book, it was like, this, we need to share this with our people. So I bought 200 copies of the book, and I'm not a reader at all. Uh,
Me either.
I'm not a reader.
Both read
We
it.
both read the book. And so we bought 200 copies of it, brought him in, had him personalize it to every single employee in this organization.
That's great.
And then he came and spoke at our awards banquet just to drive that message home. So I think that was my first awards banquet as the chief of police and her first as the assistant chief, right?
Yes.
And so I lose track of time. I'm sorry. And so that is really what is that moment in time is kind of what propelled our belief structure and added, really cemented that into the Euless Police Department culture of peer support and making sure that people are mentally, physically, and emotionally okay. Because if they're not mentally, physically, and emotionally okay, they can't be strong enough to serve our community.
Yeah.
They have to be strong personally in order to build a strong community. And so in order to do that, that's kind of what drove that home for us and put it out there. You say the vulnerability, put it out there that it's okay. It's okay to have those feelings. And I will tell you, it was a little hard, it was a little difficult because you think about who comes to an awards banquet. You have everybody that's been a retiree that's when we have 30, 40-year retirees that are sitting in the audience watching this happen that have and that didn't necessarily have the peer support in place to understand that side of it, or they were taught suppress those feelings and just suck it up, pull up your bootstraps and move on. And to just really jump out there as an organization and put your vulnerability on display and say, we know we're not okay, but we're going to fix it and we're going to fix it together and try to move forward and see if we can't make this a better place for everybody.
Yeah. There are quite a few things I want to touch on that you talked about.
I'm
So,
sorry, I just kind of
no, I want to make sure we touch on this because I have a motto, and I know it sounds really morbid and it's not meant to, but if you're not growing, you're dying, and I think that we always have to be, whether that's personally or professionally, striving to do better, to be better, and if you're not striving to do better and be better, then there's stagnation and you start to fall behind. I appreciate you honoring David, and I think that as proactive as we can try to be, there's always going to be events that happen that are reactive that then help us to be more proactive in the future, right? We're always learning from things that happen. One of the things that you said that I wanted to make sure that I pointed on is that it's about the people, right? Like it's about the people within the organization. And I think so often the conversations that I have, because there's a lot of logistics and things that happen when you start talking about implementing wellness resources and budget and all of these things. And we hear this like, what is the ROI? And like, how are we going to recoup our cash and all these things? And I think that we have to strip it all apart and realize that the ROI is the people. How can you support the people within the organization as much as you possibly can? And I really appreciated what you said earlier about how you made this assumption that everyone was okay. We all have our own perspectives, right? And you're like, we're good, everyone's good. Because I think probably in that moment, like you felt okay, right? Maybe it didn't impact you in the same way. And I really related to that. And I think a lot of people who are listening can relate to that too. I think sometimes we we kind of are in our track of thinking, right? Our perspective. And I think that this also goes, and this is kind of my next point, is I think this also goes with what you're talking about mindset, changing the mindset, breaking the stigma. I love that you said adding to the culture, because I think as soon as you start saying change the culture, that word change, everyone's like, "Ah," like, they don't like change. And so it's scary. But we say, hey, like what we do and who we are is already really great. How can we make it better? How can we add to it? How can we improve? But I think that when we can get out of our own way and we can start recognizing that just because something doesn't impact us doesn't mean that it's not going to impact somebody else. And I think that that is a learned skill, because again, we have our own perspective, and I think our perspectives are based on our past experiences and our preconditioning and, how we were raised. And
100%.
I used to do that. I used to like look at someone and be like, so what?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? Like, it's not that big of a deal. Get over it, and when I started to kind of take a step back and have more empathy for other people and understand that just because something doesn't impact me doesn't mean it's not going to impact someone else. And if we can present ourselves and we can, enter every situation with that idea of I want to support everyone as much as I possibly can, I think it allows us to have more empathy and understanding for it. And I think that's when we start to break the stigma. And I want your opinion on this because one of the conversations and also one of my observations is, I'm starting to see that a lot of organizations, command staff is on board, like leadership is on board. And a lot of the stigma comes from peer to peer pressure of like judging each other. How do you think we break stigma and how do you change that mindset? Because you said that you guys have been working on this, like changing the mindset, adding and improving the culture. How do you do that? For someone who's listening, maybe even, someone in leadership who is trying to do that, what is maybe the first step to making that conversation okay?
In any organization, take our organization, for example, there's 180 employees, right? 95 of those are police officers. A lot of those are support staff. The rest of them, and I don't mean the rest of them. I'm just saying when you take sworn,
Sure.
parcel those out, we have 180 people across the board, part-time, full-time. We have 180 people. You can't communicate with all of them every single day. So how do you communicate? And that's the key, I think, is communication, communication, communication. Because the more you hear something, the more it becomes normal or natural.
Yeah.
So one of the things that whenever I took over as police chief, I wanted to improve communication. Communication wasn't horrible. I just wanted to improve that communication from the top down. So a lot of times what happens in our business is the chief sets the tone, his command staff take that tone and they regurgitate it to the first line supervisors. The first line supervisors regurgitate it to the officers at the ground level, or in records, or in dispatch, or whatever that division is. But it gets watered down as it comes down, right? It changes. It's not anything you can control. It just happens naturally, right? So how do you combat that? You communicate from the top to everybody. And not just in an email blurb every single day. Hey, I love you, this, that, and the other, or this is what you need to be doing. I do a blog once a week and I take ownership of that blog. And that wasn't thought of on my own. It was helped right here. And other people in the organization is how do we communicate? And so I started a blog. And on that blog, every single week, I outline things that have happened during the week. I don't necessarily get into the weeds whenever we talk about what gory incident happened or this and yeah. I talk about the officers doing a good job and I highlight some of the things that they do, whether it's CID, whether it's dispatch, wherever I can glean that information from, I try to incorporate it. And I try to incorporate. They want to know what I do, right? They talk about, okay, we don't know what's happening with the budget. We don't know what's happening with this. The more information you can give them, the more vested they are in the organization, right? You don't have to give them everything, but you got to give them some nuggets of information to ask questions. And then that spurs conversations. And those conversations come back to me. We got an open door policy. My door's open. They can come in anytime, ask me anything that they want to ask. Um, and so by doing that blog, it spurs those conversations to come back to me and say, well, I read your blog and I wanted some more information about this. And then we can sit down and we can discuss it in a meaningful conversation. Every single one of my blogs that I do, I try to include something about taking care of one another, looking out for each other, and making sure that we're doing what needs to be done as an organization for the mental and physical and emotional health of each person that works here.
Yeah.
Now, some people might think outside looking in that that's being soft. We're taking care of our people. We're not, people make mistakes and we're not dealing with it. I would say that's totally contrary to that. We're doing it so we build that rapport. We're doing that so that we show people that we truly care, which makes holding people accountable so much easier. Because now you got people that are holding each other accountable instead of just sweeping things under the rug. They're holding each other accountable because they're hearing directly from the top of the organization on a weekly basis about things that are going on. So it just it makes everybody more invested in the success of the organization. Because if we're not all successful, the organization can fail. So we have to make sure that we give that ownership to the brand new person that's coming in the door, as well as the person that's been here 30 years.
Yeah. Are you two sports people?
Yes, I am.
Oh.
I
Um,
played sports. My daughter's played sports. Do I watch football? Do I watch it? Nah, I watch it with people that like it, but I don't really care to watch it all the time. She's a diehard
hard.
uh,
I always
cow.
I always think about this idea of like team mentality,
Yeah,
and in a team environment, you're as strong as your weakest link,
correct,
right? And so you're always trying to build everybody up for the success of the team. And
correct.
even when the team is successful, right? And we can talk about, sports. You say Cowboys is your team. So
Oh, yeah, one of them.
One of them.
so let's say the Cowboys
Rangers.
ever make it back to the Super Bowl. I don't know, but
Ow.
let's just say
Well, they will.
let's just say they win a Super Bowl. They're still going to review tape. They're still going to go back and they're going to say, where were our weaknesses? Where were our opportunities to have done even better? They won the whole thing.
Yeah,
They were the best for that season. And they're still going to go back after their celebration and they're going to try to identify where their mistakes were, where their weaknesses were, and how they could
Correct.
improve. And I really relate this a lot to organizations. I think that as soon as and I think that you can relate this to any relationship, whether it's a friendship, a partnership with a spouse, it's team.
yeah,
And you want the team to succeed. And so I think a lot of this language of like you're being soft or weak is not in the best interest of the team. That's
Correct.
not supportive team environment language, right? If you are seeing someone struggle, the first thought should be, how can we help them improve? Because when they improve, we all improve. And so I think
Correct.
that's the conversation, and I really appreciate that you lean a lot on communication, positive reinforcement. It's something that is not done enough. And when people feel valued and they have a sense of pride and self-worth in what they do, that helps them to show up for themselves and for their team in a more productive way. And so I think that so often we try to look for the mistakes and we forget to celebrate the wins. And so I think by having those conversations and then also being able to, explain the why when people come into your office and they're like, wait, why did we do it this way? And then being able to have open conversations. So I appreciate you sharing that. But I just had that thought. I was like,
yeah,
to me, it's team. It's always team. How can you show up every day and say, how can I show up as a team player? How can I support the team? And how can we help, elevate everybody?
yeah. I totally agree. That is
100%.
team is my thing. I love to talk about that all the time, but every player on the team has an important role,
Yeah.
and not one role is more important than the other. And every player on the team also is a leader in some form or fashion. They're a leader. And so we really try to empower everybody to step up when they see something. The cool thing is now, like, we've gotten to a point where we've been through a lot as an agency, but when we have a critical incident happen, for example, now it's almost to the point where the officer will come back and say, "Oh my gosh, like my phone blew up, like I could hardly answer everybody," because everybody has an interest in checking on that person and making sure that they're good. And it's not just a few people here or there that will reach out. And so in the beginning, people would say, like, "Well, I wanted to reach out, but I didn't know what to say." And I'm like, "Say anything. Say anything is better than saying nothing." People understand that you may not know what to say and it's uncomfortable for you, but the fact that you reached out and showed you cared, that means more than anything. It doesn't matter that you don't know what to say. And so we've kind of crossed over a hurdle where now we're just kind of on the opposite side of things. And it's hard to look back at where we used to be, where it was like, one of my really good friends in the department, he's a captain and he was involved in a critical incident in a shooting. And I said, at the time, I didn't reach out to you because I thought maybe he just wants to be left alone. Like, you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to think about it. Well, the truth is, he's thinking about that incident 24/7, right? For a time period when it first happens. And so me reaching out to him would have meant the world to him. He would remember it to this day if I had reached out to him, but I didn't because for fear of, well, I don't want to bother him. And so we talk about those things a lot with with anybody, when we have an incident happen, so that everybody kind of understands and gets on the same page. Like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like, let's just reach out. And so now we're on the other side where it's almost to the extreme that your phone's about to blow up when something happens, and that's a good thing. That's a good problem to have.
I really,
Exactly. And the cool thing about it is not just her and I, that you see everybody really do it is someone will be going through something personally or they'll go through something professionally and they're going to walk down this hall outside my office and we'll hug them. Don't ask them. You walk up and you hug them and they hug you back. They know, and even if you didn't send them a text or didn't do anything, or you didn't say a word to them, you just hugged them and they went on about their business. They know they're cared about.
Yeah.
They know that you care. And it's cool to see other people doing that throughout the organization. I'm a hugger. I hug probably too many people, but I hug. And I love to do that because it's very meaningful and impactful to that person at the time that they need a hug. They don't want to ask for it, but they're not going to turn it away.
I
And they
really, really appreciate that. I've done a lot of podcasts and I've heard multiple sides of the story, where there were people who were out on injury or, they went through an incident and no one reached out and how that impacted them. I also had a conversation with someone who was contemplating suicide, and they had the reverse happen. They had put something out where, like, they didn't have a toaster. You'll have to listen to the podcast. His podcast was really powerful, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it was something about a toaster where he was like, he felt so low, where he's like, man, like, I don't even have a toaster. Like, I don't have my act together. I don't even have a toaster. And he had like put something out and like 10 toasters showed up on his front door, and how much that meant to him. And
Yeah.
so I really appreciate the focus of that. And, I think that a lot of times, like, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves with wanting to have the right things to say. And I think even by saying, I don't know what to say, but I'm here,
yeah,
Yeah.
means so much. You could be honest and say, I really don't know what to say right now,
right.
but sending you support, or but I'm here, And so I really appreciate you saying that, because I know that in that story about the toaster,
Yeah.
it really was a part of helping him to overcome suicidal ideations and start, improving himself and his wellness. So thank you for everything that you've shared. And I want you to have the opportunity to take the floor. I'll obviously ask my final question at the end, but is there anything else that you two definitely want to share about wellness, any message or things that you want to share with our listener, or anything you're doing organizationally that you haven't mentioned yet that you want to highlight? I want to give you guys the floor.
You want to go first? I've gone first before I.
No, Like, I don't know, there's so many things to say. I think for us, like we've come leaps and bounds, over the years. And so we really tried to, it's all about the people, right? And this profession is an incredible profession. But it can take a lot away from you if you don't keep yourself well. And so we recognize that we've lost a lot of officers have come through our organization and they've left maybe by for reasons that were less than desirable. Just because, and then when they left, we thought somebody will come to us and say, oh, I knew that guy was struggling with alcohol, or I knew this, and I knew this was bound to happen. And we're like, why didn't somebody say something? Why didn't we do something earlier? And so, as an incredible of a career as it is, we want people to leave. I kind of joke that, my friend said this in the past, we want you to leave happy and healthy with a pretty retirement picture on the wall, not one where you look like this job just beat you up over the years and is going to take your life from you, because you deserve to retire from it and be happy and enjoy your family and enjoy your life. And the only way you can do that is by taking care of yourself, throughout this career, and taking care of each other. And so you've got to be the eyes and ears for those men and women around you and support them. And so, the moment somebody comes into our organization, we probably start preaching at them a lot about this topic, because we understand how critical it is. This is the biggest thing that's going to help you be successful, is your mental wellness. And, physical has a lot to do with that, but if you're not mentally well, you're not going to be physically well. And there's so many things you can say about that, but it really starts with your mental wellness, and it takes a toll on people to see the things that they see. It's not normal to see those things and to deal with them and cope with them as a human being. And we are human. If we weren't human, we would be a bunch of robots and we wouldn't be very effective as police officers. That's the thing that makes us great, is that we do have those emotions for people and want to help them and make our communities better. And so it's just so important to keep this topic at the forefront and talk about it constantly. Sometimes when he does his blog, I'm like, we need to mention something about peer support, or he'll be thinking about it like, hey, we need to remind everybody where we're at with this. And just because we don't ever want it to lose the traction that we've gotten to so far. So, but we're still looking for ways. And so, we're open our officers too. If there's like, hey, you guys, this is terrible and this needs to change, we want them to feel comfortable saying that, and what's going to help them and help them be better and have a long career.
Thank you.
I like you used team earlier, and I relate back to you say, did I like sports? Professional sports, yeah, I like to watch baseball. I relate back to when I was coaching baseball as a young man. I coached a baseball team, and I would use the analogy of team. Together, everyone achieves more, right? If you just break it down and you make them understand. I remember one baseball team I took, and it was just okay. Nobody wanted these kids. I said, I'll take them all, right? I'll coach them. And I coached these kids and brought them along. And this isn't to pat myself on the back, it's to pat those kids on the back, because a couple of those kids took ownership of that team and took ownership of the culture of that team. And we ended up going to the championship from nothing. But they started the very first game, we're going to the ship, we're going to the ship. And it was just a ragtag bunch of kids that had no business going to the championship at the beginning of the year, but they built that themselves. And they built that themselves because someone stood up and they invested in each other, and they invested in the whole team. Same thing here. We got to invest in our team. We got to invest in our people. We are a family. It's not just a buzzword. We are a family. When one of our family members hurt, we hurt just like them. We may be dysfunctional at times, very dysfunctional at times, but in the end, we're a family and we're here for each other. She said it at the very beginning. When you get a job offer in this organization, whether it's sworn officer, dispatcher, jailer, whatever you are coming into this organization, you meet with her and I. Now, she's already met with them once in the hiring board. I'm the last person that gets to talk to them before they get that little piece of paper that says they have a job here. And so I sit down with them for about an hour and I talk to them everything about benefits, about retirement, about deferred compensation, about the job that they're taking in. but I spend probably the bulk of my time talking to them about their mental and physical wellness. And I talk to them about nobody here should ever tell you, suck it up, pull your bootstraps up, go back to work, don't worry about it. Everybody should be invested in your mental health. And so don't, if you find somebody that's not, please bring that to the forefront. We want to know who that person is. We want to be able to deal with it on the front end. But they walk out of my office understanding that it's okay to say that you have issues and seeing something or hearing something or dealing with this specific incident. And they hear that from the top. The funny thing about it is during the hiring board, they've already heard it from her. So all it does is reinforce the message that that's why we're here. And so our command staff, our supervisors, our officers that sit on the board, they hear this repetitively from her and I. They read it repetitively in the blogs. So it just becomes normal. It becomes natural for them to be concerned about it. And so if we can do anything, make this place a little bit better. I'm not going to be here forever. I have a retirement goal in mind. When I get to that retirement goal, I have no doubt in my mind I'll be able to hand the keys to the kingdom over to the next person who's sitting to my right, and she can carry that just a little bit further into the better area of serving the community and serving the people that work here.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you both for sharing. My final question, and you've already given so many words of wisdom already, but if you could encapsulate into like one neat little package, what words of wisdom would you give to someone who is earlier in their career? You know, maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
That's a tough.
It's a tough question.
It's a tough. I would say that it's normal, absolutely normal to have feelings about the things that you see and deal with in this profession. And it's okay to not feel good about that at times. And but you have men and women next to you that have been through the same things, and sharing those feelings with them is going to make a difference. The worst incident I went through in my career, other than outside of losing officers that worked here, that is the worst. But from an incident perspective that I worked, I was really struggling with it, and happened to speak to my dad. Hadn't talked to anybody about it, but he was a former person in law enforcement or a police officer for many years, and his perspective, he gave me one little thing back, and it changed my whole perspective. To this day, I remember what he said to me, and it helped me heal from that particular incident. And so, it's not easy. It's not an easy career. It's an incredible career, but you have to give yourself some grace and know that it's okay. It's normal to have normal human feelings about the things we see and deal with.
Thank you.
Just because you cry doesn't mean you're broke. Just because things bother you doesn't mean you're deficient. Be who you are. Be your own person. Understand that you're human. We all make mistakes. Every single person makes a mistake. Nobody's perfect in this world. Every single person deals with things that they see and hear differently. Doesn't make it wrong to feel a certain way. It's okay. I'm going to say it again. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. So you have to be the catalyst. You have to be the person that's willing to step up and say, this isn't right. And we're going to make it right. And we're going to get the people the help that they need. And we're going to get them to those places in life so that they can be successful later on. Like she said, everybody wants to get to retirement. Everybody wants, I mean, why do we work? We work most of our life, right? We need to enjoy the few years that we have at the end of retirement. We shouldn't be just sitting in a corner worrying about all the things that happen throughout our life. So get people the help when they need it. Love on them, care about their families. And if you do all of those things, I think you build a successful organization. I think you build a successful community. Um, and holding people accountable is so much easier whenever you have invested yourself into the organization and into everybody that works here. Accountability pretty much takes care of itself, and you don't have to work through it. So I don't know. I just, it's an awesome responsibility to be the chief of police of an organization. When I started in this business here, I never dreamed at the very beginning that I would be sitting where I'm sitting today. I did get asked about halfway through it, where do you want to be? And I told the chief at that time I wanted his chair. I wanted to be the chief of the organization, but I didn't want to be the chief of the organization so I could say, oh, my badge says chief of police. I wanted to be the chief of police so that I could change, I could help continue to add to that culture and continue to help the people that work here in the community that we serve. We're all here together. So let's work together as a team and do the best that we can for each other.
Thank you. Thank you both. I've honestly really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you both showing up with your own perspectives and sharing those perspectives with our listeners. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yes. Without people like you, we would be a little less efficient in life. Thank you.
I appreciate that.